we were talking a little bit about your shirt when you walked in.
Yes.
Just a shout out to Joe Carter, who's
Yes.
1 year ago, passed away 1 year ago today.
1 year ago today, yeah.
To the day. And Joe, man, just a godly man with a godly family. Jacob and Josh, his sons,
Yeah.
taking on that legacy from their father. And I mean, we were talking about the story we talked about before with him and Carrick, Kirk's son
Yes.
on 6th Street and wanting to go evangelize on 6th Street in Austin.
They didn't.
Like on a Saturday
They
night.
didn't. Right. It was just before. It was just before.
Yeah, yeah.
So they didn't want to say they were going to go out there and evangelize. What they said to me was, well, I mean, we thought we would just go out to 6th Street, on a Friday night and hand out waters and just see if people want to talk about Jesus.
So let me start by saying that realistically, in Carrick's friendship with Jacob has always been the idea man. Hey, Carrick, let's go do this. And Carrick has always been the one like, I'll do it, but I'm doing this reluctantly. So anyway, he calls and he's speaking on the phone and T is right there. And the first thing he says, when he takes the phone and he just kind of puts it like this and goes, hey, Mommy, you think it's okay if we go down to 6? Wait, what? What did you just say? Because hang on a minute. We're calling John. So you get a phone call directly from T, and it's just like, no.
Well, the funny
No,
thing
go ahead.
was
You
that
say
T
you're
sends
right.
me the text.
Yes.
And I'm like, why is T texting me? And I pull up and as I start to read it, and all I see is I need you to talk to Carrick. Boom, my phone rings and it's Carrick. And I was like, okay. So I didn't read the text, so I didn't know what she was asking at that point. And then
it was taken care of.
as Carrick starts talking, I'm like, hold on, let me go back to this text real quick. So I start reading it and I'm like, oh, okay. So, I mean, the first thing that I started with is, first of all, I love where y'all's heart is. The intent behind what you're doing is amazing. The fact that how old are they? 20?
20.
20?
I think Jacob just turned 20.
That 19
Yes,
and
at
20-year-olds
19,
want to go and talk to people about Jesus, I think is amazing. I said, the one flaw
But there's a
in
but.
this
But
is going down to 6th Street on a Friday night right before South by. I was like, nobody down there is going to want to have a productive conversation with you. Everybody's going to want to poke the bear. You're going to be dealing with a whole bunch of drunk people that just aren't thinking rationally, whether they are believers, whether they're, no matter what they are, it's just not going to be conducive to having a
Not
positive,
one bit.
conversation. So, yeah. And then Jacob called me shortly after with his buddy Banner.
Banner, yes.
And we sat on
Great
the phone
kids.
for maybe an hour, and it all ended with them just wanting to hear cop stories and reasons
course.
why they shouldn't go down to 6th
Right.
Street on Friday night. But man, no, I look at that. I look at both of those boys, and they're a handful of young men that are in our church that I look at, and I'm like, man, I really hope that my son can grow up and will be similar to these, young
Absolutely.
men. Caleb North.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Stand
Love
up.
that dude.
Mike North is the example. Come on.
Caleb,
come on.
and Caleb's rambles on Facebook. Have you ever read some of his long, thought out stuff? I'm like,
wise at a young age, man.
It
Yes.
is. But when I
Well
read, and I
said.
told him, I was like, when I read your I don't want to call it rambling because it's very well thought out and it's very articulate.
Yeah.
Have y'all ever watched Meat Eater? I know you've watched Meat Eater with Steve Ranella.
I've seen it. Yeah.
I read his posts and I hear Steve Ranella's voice because you know how Steve Ranella reads over
Yes.
and he commentates all of his shows and he'll be sitting up against a tree turkey hunting. And he was like, whenever I was a young boy, my dad used to tell me when we were out hunting, and I read Caleb's
That's what it
because
sounds
Steve
like.
Ranella is
Yeah.
super intelligent,
Oh,
very
yeah.
well spoken, very well educated. And
That's
I
what
told him,
you
I was
picture.
like, dude, every time I read your posts, I read it in Steve Ranella's voice. Not yours, but Steve Ranella's.
That's good.
Caleb's writing a book.
Yes, you're
Not
right, he is.
surprised.
Well, it's
Not surprised.
like a book of all of his little thoughts. So yeah,
That's gonna be good, man. But look at strong young men, right?
And
Strong young
Carrick
men.
is absolutely one of those. Jacob is one of those.
Yes.
Jacob
Yes.
Carter, Joe's son.
Yes.
And I see all of the positives, and I see the future that they have in front of them.
Yeah.
You know, and you look at who are the men that raise these, these kids. You know, we've got you that raised Carrick. We've got Joe that raised
Man.
Jacob. You got Mike that raised Caleb.
Yes,
And
yes.
they're all solid men with solid moms, that also
Really
raised
good-
them.
really good point.
We all know that it's probably more the moms than the dads, but
Really, really good point.